Now, Moses Itauma may be the future of heavyweight boxing, but Filip Hrgovic could expose one fatal flaw: experience. Itauma has talent, speed and momentum, but Hrgovic has rounds, scars and professional knowledge. This fight may reveal whether potential is enough. So I was watching an interview and I thought there were some interesting observations. So let's give a perspective that hopefully aids further understanding. So in this interview, Tom Gray argues that Moses Itauma has no right being ranked in the world top 5 given his limited professional ring time. So the question becomes, or the statements become, is a sparring record ever a valid substitute for professional experience at world level? So does sparring make you world level? If you have world-class sparring, that should not make you a world-class fighter or have a world-class ranking. In other words, your sparring improves you as a fighter, but it doesn't automatically qualify you as a top 10 boxer. Because to be a top 10 boxer, you should by default have to beat top 10 boxers. So sparring affects your boxing intelligence in a positive way, but it does not affect your official rankings. Sparring is done behind closed doors. If it did affect your official rankings, then Martin Bakole would probably be the greatest of all time. That, of course, is a joke. So sparring is important for nurturing. Sparring is important for a boxer's evolution, but sparring on its own does not put you in the top 10 or in the top 20. Sparring on its own does not put you in the rankings. They are two separate things. So then Gareth Davis defends Itauma's ranking by pointing to his trajectory and the quality of fighters he's been in the gym with. Logically, there's some problems here. At what point does momentum and pedigree in the gym justify a ranking? Boxing environment. What does a positive boxing environment do? Well, it affects your development in a positive way. You might develop how to control the fight with the jab. You might develop how to throw a counter right hand in a more efficient way. You might develop how to adapt in the ring. You can develop multifarious traits. But the premise that who you're in the ring with in the gym gives you a justification in terms of a ring ranking, I think philosophically doesn't make sense. So for example, if a boxer is sparring with Anthony Joshua, that does not make him Anthony Joshua, and that does not affect his ranking. If you train with Tyson Fury, that does not make you Tyson Fury. If you train with Usyk, that doesn't make you Usyk. And not only does it not make you Usyk, it doesn't even affect the rankings, because your rankings and who you spar with and who you're in the gym with are separate entities. They are separate things. Now, of course, if you're sparring with Anthony Joshua, you'll become a better boxer. If you're sparring with Tyson Fury, you'll become a better boxer. If you're sparring with Usyk, you'll become a better boxer. But you'll become better at your profession. But it's not a qualification. You don't spar with Usyk and then become a top 10 heavyweight. So then the next statement is that the Hrgovic fight is framed as the first real test, not a showcase, but a genuine examination. So the interesting thing here is, how much of a test is Hrgovic? I think that's a genuine question. And on theory, when you think about the test of Hrgovic, you think of the jab. He has a really good jab. And then you think about the backhand. He has a really good backhand. Against Daniel Dubois, he had amazing accuracy with his backhand. So it's not just the power of the backhand, and he's not necessarily the most strongest puncher, but it's the accuracy of how many times he can land the backhand. And Daniel Dubois is a good reference for that. And it's also the pace. Hrgovic mostly sets a very fast pace. And also he has this other weapon that he's developing, which is the left hook to the body. That's a very underrated weapon. And if he can get that off, how does Moses Itauma deal with it? So there's a few things Moses Itauma needs to deal with. He needs to deal with the pace. He needs to deal with the jab. He needs to deal with the backhand. and also he needs to deal with the left hook to the body. And the next statement I think is interesting, and perhaps it's more of a question than a statement. How a fighter carries himself at a press conference, does it tell us anything about the fighter and about the fight? Let's explore this a little bit. In one sense, a press conference is an act. Why is it an act? Well, you say that you're in shape, you say that you're ready to fight, and you say that you're going to win. This is the act that is expected. For example, you won't go into a press conference and say that you're going to lose. But there can be subtle signs. For example, avoiding eye contact with your opponent may be a sign of lack of confidence. Tone of voice can indicate great or lack of confidence. Tone of voice could indicate overconfidence. Also, who is with you could be a sign. If you turn up without a trainer, that could indicate a problem. It also may not be a problem, there might be a scheduling issue. But with regards to the press conference, Hrgovic in his last fight, Abel Sanchez was not there. And I've been thinking to myself, is Abel Sanchez involved in this camp? Because I think he could be a vital asset to Hrgovic. So as there are new press conferences, that's one thing I'll be looking for. Is Abel Sanchez there? Because that could give us an indication about his preparation, his strategy, or lack of strategy. So I think press conferences, if you look deep enough, they can present meaning. Of course, a press conference is to market the event. You want visibility and you want virality, but it can give us an indication. And then there's this discussion that draws the line between Hrgovic's professional experience and why it makes him a genuine danger, not a stepping stone. Here's the first premise of that statement, or a premise of that statement. Is he a genuine danger? Filip Hrgovic as a contender has credibility as a boxer, and therefore if he turns up and he is prepared, he can be a genuine danger, and he could win this fight. Emphasis on could. Hrgovic, as we've stated, he has the jab, he has the backhand, he has pace, he has the left hook to the body, but he also has experience. He has managed bad situations, and by default, he has had to adapt more than Moses Itauma. That experience is boxing IQ, and that boxing IQ could serve him well. So this has the ingredients or the potential of being a real challenging fight. But again, I think the Abel Sanchez variable and the preparation from Filip Hrgovic is essential. If he doesn't have Abel Sanchez in his corner, and if he doesn't have a good trainer in his corner, then I think the chances of victory for Filip Hrgovic reduce significantly. Now, both analysts in this interview, they agree that Moses Itauma has rare potential, but they diverge on whether potential alone justifies the global platform that he's being handed. This is an interesting one because it's not just potential with Moses Itauma, it's the actual performances. So it's the potential, it's the machine, but it's the performances. Dillian Whyte had a good resume. He had beaten good fighters and been competitive against good fighters. And he totally destroyed him. Of course there's context. Of course it's not the same Dillian Whyte that fought Joseph Parker. But he had experience. He had a dangerous left hook. But Moses Itauma took care of business. Jermaine Franklin had a resume. He was durable. He had boxing intelligence. And he totally destroyed him. So it's not just the genetics. It's the performances that have given him this global platform. Well, it's the performances and the marketing machine behind him that's given him the platform. Could it be an act of sabotage? Well, it depends on the fighter. For example, when David Haye fought Carl Thompson, that was too early. He was stopped in the 5th round, but he was able to rebuild. he was able to rebuild and become cruiserweight champion and become heavyweight champion. But that fight was too early. But David Haye rebuilt, he learned from his mistakes, and he probably would have learned a lot from that fight. Joe Calzaghe, however, again, you can argue he fought Eubank at the right time, or maybe he fought Eubank too early. But because Joe Calzaghe is an exceptionally rare talent, he was able to persevere and overcome. But of course, if you take a prospect and you move them too quickly, then that can be detrimental for them, because a loss, it affects your credibility. A loss, it affects crowd perception, and a loss also affects your money. So this is my final statement. Think of this. Think of this as the moment where the idea meets the reality. Itauma, let's say he is the talent. He has the hype. He has the gym stories. But Hrgovic, he brings rounds, he brings damage, adaptation, and bad moments survived. That matters. A ranking can be built in various ways. It can be built on momentum, but a career is built under pressure. If Itauma passes, the narrative explodes even further. If he looks vulnerable, the questions, they get louder. This fight is not sabotage. It is a calculated gamble, and you cannot progress without risk. So that's the end of the video. Now I'm trying to build a digital boxing community. That means I'm interested in your thoughts, I'm interested in your perspectives, and I'm interested in your observations. Now, if you simply want to support the channel, simply press the like button, the hype button, and subscribe. And if you want to watch more content like this, then simply click here or click here. As always, thanks for your time. It is much appreciated.